Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the farm. Today's Monday, and I believe we have a very productive week ahead of us. We're still pushing on with harvest preparations. We've got a handful of things to check off our list still. We're going to get started on some of those today. Our crops are getting closer and closer by the day to being able to harvest. I'll talk about that more later in the video. Before we get too far along, make sure you hit that like button and leave a comment down below. It is one of the easiest and cheapest ways you can support the channel. I'm greatly appreciative of all of you who watch the channel, especially those who interact with the videos. Thank you all very much. Let's get to work. Today is going to be one of my favorite preparation days because it's all about me. No, it's not my birthday. We're getting out my ride for the year, the 9460R in the grain cart right behind me. It's been patiently resting in the front corner of the barn all off season. We have to look at it every single time we open the barn door to come in here. I think it's time we pull it out. But we gotta move some stuff out of the way. Mainly the S670 and S780, and I believe back there in the back is the 9460R with the PTO. So I'm gonna pull those two out, bring that over, hook it up. Hopefully no problems. My dad called me on Saturday evening to tell me that the S670 side panel was up because the grain tank cleanout cover was not attached. Now, obviously, that's very important to put on. I think maybe if he was calling me on the weekend about this, is he may have been losing some sleep, had a bad dream that we forgot to put that on, lost a lot of grain out of there. So we can't forget to put that on. Maybe we should just do that now. Should be in our treasure chest. There it is. What size is that, 18? Any guesses? I'll bring an 18 and a 15. I think one of those has to be right. My money's on the 15. And we are correct. Everyone take a deep breath and stay calm. I'm going to put this chrome socket on our impact gun. Think it's okay. Folks, I'm not tightening lug nuts here. You're complaining about me using chrome sockets when I'm installing bolts on a draper. Those 1/4-inch bolts are going to snap long before I shatter a chrome socket. Everyone can just take a chill pill. The extension was not necessary whatsoever. I recall this being harder to get to. And just like that, we're not going to lose any grain from there. Unless those come off. Besides, everyone, these are John Deere chrome sockets. If they were Case IH chrome sockets, I might be a little bit concerned about their reliability. But John Deere stuff is bulletproof, right? Not quite enough oomph. Oomph! See? It's all in the sound effects. I would probably say we put almost 5 hours a year on these machines, pulling them in and out of the barn. We do so much shuffling, a lot of times just to get one piece of equipment out. Probably adds up pretty quickly. Let's unjam this mess. Just this S670 alone has freed up a lot of space. Surely we could find a more efficient way to park these in the barn and not have to do this shuffle all the time. Maybe if we could use that north door, Dad. This looks like an adequate spot. I was headed to move the 780, but the boss showed up. He hopped behind the steering wheel. He's gonna back it out. We work in much different styles. He's more of a short burst of work with a little bit of a break. I'm more of a medium speed with no break at all. Different strokes for different folks. Hey, look at that, guys. That's an 8-row corn head on an S780. I was somewhat surprised to the reaction to the S780 unveil. Everyone was very concerned that we have an 8-row corn head on it. They said, oh, you're not going to utilize the combine fully, this or that. And I understand that logic, but an 8-row corn head will work just fine. I know you could put a 12-row on, or a 16-row, or a 24-row. Heck, you could put a 48-row corn head on if it could lift it, or if they made those. But that's not the point. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. We typically pick very high-yielding corn in this area. If we did get into a scenario where we had a drought-like year with next to no yield, yes, the 8-row would be a problem. We are going to be going fast. I'd say we're probably going to pick 8, 9, maybe 10 miles an hour. Head loss might occur, but it will be minimum. Biggest factor, other than just doing things the way we've always done them, is that a C8R corn head is about $80,000 cheaper than a C12R folder. So a brand new 12-row folding corn head. That's a lot of money just for a wider head to go a little slower. It is certainly something that we're going to keep our eye on this year. If we decide that we need the 12-row, we'll probably make the trade. The comment section, though, made it seem like we were committing a war crime by having an 8-row on there. Now there's nothing obstructing my sweet grain cart. Just need to get that out, do a loop-de-whoop-de-doo, and then back around and hook it up. Give me juice. I can already tell that I need a new air freshener in here. These tractors just kind of get a stale smell after a while from sitting in the barn. Doesn't help that we don't have leather seats. Nothing holds unpleasant smells quite like cloth. Try number 2. Oh, whew. Finally. It only took 5 minutes and a lot of labor from Chris and I, but the power shaft is officially hooked up. I guess everything is hooked up is a little bit misleading. All of the loose wires have been removed from the tongue of the grain cart. I've got a lot of them in here. We're just good enough to get it out of the barn. We've got some welding to do on a bracket that broke on us, so let's pull this out. Going up and into the barn and backing out is a lot easier than trying to make that corner into the doors. That's a risky place to leave my socket set on the edge of my bed. Oh well. To the welder we go. Hey, there's our load of dirt for our next project. Probably working on that here soon. No need to fear, there isn't anything structurally wrong with the grain cart. We just rigged up this bar last season to hold up our hydraulic cables to keep them from rubbing on the power shaft. And when we went to unhook it, coincidentally, it just snapped off. Which is pretty impressive because that's probably 3/8 thick metal. So we're going to plate it together, weld it up. I don't know where the other half is. Dad took it somewhere. But I'm being interrupted to go do something else, so we'll see how this unfolds in a little bit. Our intermediary project involves that load of dirt and our beloved backhoe here, and a bridge on one of our troublesome farms that keeps washing out. I was definitely excited to get the grain cart out. I was not expecting, though, to have this much sweat on me and have to have worked that hard. Sometimes those PTOs can be little rascals trying to hook them up after not being on for a season. You get a little rusty, don't really want to move on, so it takes a lot of convincing to get them to slide on the shaft. Prepare your ears for a horrendous beeping noise courtesy of Case IH. Ah! See you later, grain cart. Hey, there's a field of corn just right down the road from us that's been picked. Must have been short season to be that dry already. Wow. Someone's been busy over here to the west. Although I do believe this guy has hogs to feed, so we harvest this pretty wet, probably plant some shorter season corn. Cheaper than buying it from the elevator. This part makes me sad. My poor beans. They're ruined! There's our dirt, there's our bridge. You can see how much it was washed out there on the right side of the culvert. Essentially, I pushed it down to see where all of the weak spots were, where there was kind of hollow areas, and now I'm just taking this dirt and trying to fill that in, pack it down. We got clay specifically because we think it'll hold better than any kind of silt we could have pulled out of the bottom of the ditch. This is one of those jobs that's hard to film and do at the same time because you need both hands for the backhoe sticks. But here's half of it that's completed. On the other side, though, you can see the problem we're having. Everywhere I push down is where this culvert washed out. So we're gonna have to get another load of dirt in here, and hopefully that'll be enough to fix that, and we'll be able to get to the backside and mow and harvest here in a couple weeks. All right, we're back onto the grain cart project. The machinist is doing a little bit of cutting over there. This bar had a little bolt hole in it, so I think that's probably part of the reason that it broke. Cutting it off on both sides, I'm gonna put it together and weld it. Eve, when you weld on something, you're supposed to unplug the electronics. Ow!
Want to get your arm?
You poked me with the rod. A couple things I've gathered so far. One, automatically adjusting eye protection is very nice, and these old ones aren't quite as easy to strike an arc with. Two, hurts if you get poked with the hot stick. And three, as a family with very shaky hands, welding is not necessarily one of our strong suits. And it's now back in operating condition till it breaks again. I'm surprised it doesn't come from the factory with some kind of mount on here to keep these hoses off of this PTO. Normally not an issue, but if this thing starts to spin a lot, rubs one of these hoses, it won't take long to blow a line. It's really amazing how some days we just jump from place to place. We're back over here on this bridge checking it out. I leveled it out a little bit more. Dad made it across with a bat wing. I guess mowing it is incredibly important to him. I'm almost 95% confident that with maybe a half load more of dirt, this bridge will be crossable with even our big S780 combine. The amount of dirt that had washed away on the side of the culvert here really shows you the true power of Mother Nature. When we get one of those very massive rainfalls, that water comes through here with a lot of force. It washes next to the culvert, takes a lot of dirt with you. Not only does it decommission the bridge for crossing, a lot of times it's very hazardous because it's very sneaky about it. Ironically, the dirt will bridge over the top and you won't even know that it's washed out 3 or 4 foot down until you take something heavy over it. The batwing did make it over. We just got a tiny bit more to do. I don't know if that dirt's going to come today or not. We are actually contractually obligated to mow these filter strips at least once per year, usually in August, so I think Dad does feel a little motivated to get that done. The beans mature a little differently on our clay farms. Not quite like all that black dirt we farm over here. And we're back to the grain cart again. I've got a couple more things to do on that. One of them includes greasing about 6 or 7 grease zerks. We grease the PTO before we put it on. It's usually easier that way. I've got to do the remainder of the drive shaft to the back. Got to do some auger folds, auger top flight bearing, and then maybe some stuff on the back. After I do that, I'm gonna have to check the hydraulics, make sure they're in the order I want them to. We're gonna focus on the greasing first. I do want to give J&M some props on this grain cart. Other than having to climb the ladder to get that stuff in there, this is by far one of the easiest implements we have to grease. I know it's not super complicated, but they went above and beyond to make sure that you could access the grease zerks under the shields and everywhere else without too much work. Now it does involve a little bit of crawling on the ground. Not that big deal, I guess I could use the work. Gotta check that gearbox. I think this one will probably do it. I can get it out. She's pretty snug. This seems a little excessive, but I don't make the rules here. That just made a hard project very easy. Nothing quite like a good cheater bar. Yep, we've got oil. I need to stop parking the tractor with such a sharp articulation. I'm getting too wide to fit through these gaps. I prefer remote number 1 to be my slide that lets the grain in and out of the tank. The only way to really get an idea of where it is to watch that rod. Okay. I think I'm happy with that. Number 2, I like to control the spout with. And it popped out, I just watched it. Number 3, I like to be my fold. Looks like number 3 is my spout. It seems like constantly babysitting hydraulic lines is just a normal part of farming. I foresee the day when instead of having 6 different lines coming in here, we'll just have one 1-inch high flow line coming to the back to a junction box that's electronically controlled. Those electronics will direct the hydraulic flow to and from the part that we need it from. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but I don't think it's too far in the future. Everyone remember grain flow control, spout control, auger fold. And of course PTO to engage the auger in the first place. Now I need to finish installing my electronics. Backup camera, scales. It's amazing. Anymore, you spend just as much time getting your technology ready as you do actually getting the machine ready. Farming sure has changed over the years. Will this scale work? Hello scale, nice to see you too. Better have good news for me. 180 pounds, I've lost weight. That's a good sign though. That means that we are registering a weight on our grain cart, so our scales are theoretically working. Are they accurate? That's yet to be determined, but we won't know till we have grain. And after an hour of tinkering, I've got all of my technology where I want it. I've got my auto steer screen down where it was, but I brought it towards me with a bracket. That way I can kind of look down on it a little bit better. I don't have to fiddle as much farther away in the corner. I'm also trying something different. I put my camera up here as well, as opposed to right down there. Part of the reason is I do have a camera on the spout that I can flip to, and I'd like to be able to see it at the same time I look at my scales. Did I make a messy jungle of brackets? Yes. It's my mess though, and isn't that what life is all about, creating your own messes? Oh man. We gotta make sure we keep a close eye on the radiator, especially cutting soybeans. Those very fine dust particles really like to clog up the radiator. You can see where there's already some in here, probably from last season. It wouldn't hurt to take it to the hose right now, just use some nice low pressure hydrant water. I was told by a mechanic that you should never use a power washer on a radiator because these little fins are so weak that a power washer might actually bend them and close them, where regular pressure water isn't exactly strong enough to disform any of the fins. Back to the main farm we go. The front screens really weren't that bad. I cleaned them off pretty quickly. I pulled them forward and looked at the big radiator in the back, and it was just packed full of bean dust. I got a lot of it out. It's not going to be perfect. What it is going to do though is keep this tractor a lot cooler. Cooler engines usually last longer, although anything can happen. Well, would you look at that? The combines and the grain cart lined up perfectly for a thumbnail for this video. I love when it works out like that. If all of that green and yellow paint right there doesn't get you excited for harvest season, I don't know what will. We're back at the bridge for our third round of dirt movement. We got our new pile, should be enough to finish this. Sometimes it's nice to be the one watching Dad run the backhoe as opposed to the one running the backhoe while Dad watches. It's much more relaxing being on the outside as opposed to sitting in the seat in there getting a million different hand signals yelled at you at once. We might have enough extra dirt to make a second bridge. The backhoe is kind of like the Swiss Army knife of equipment on the farm. It can really do a little bit of everything, but it does excel at moving dirt. It is also equally capable of doing a tremendous amount of destruction, which is more in line with my skill set. That looks pretty good. Marty gets to have all the fun, and I get to do the boring part. At least I get to check out this beautiful field of soybeans. While we were enjoying some nice road time in the backhoe, Dad, Chris, and Jeff were working on that 7800, our other auger tractor. It's our batwing mowing tractor. Unhook the batwing, put the hammer strap on the hitch, and then we reverse the PTO to get it at the right RPM for the auger. They're going over to hook that up. Who knows, may set up to a bend today. I was walking to my truck and I noticed something peculiar on the roof. It's a monster truck. I think I'm gonna have a talk with my nephews. Trucks are supposed to be on the ground, not on the roof of the barn. I'm just kidding. I don't think we're actually going to be setting up to a bend today, or at least I hope not, because I still got a lot of things on my list to get done. I think maybe seeing all these other different combines going in the area may have the wheels spin a little bit in my dad's head. Who knows, we'll find out. Okay, the rest of the crew is replacing the shear bolts on the augers, just making sure they're ready to go with fresh bolts, no wear on them. I'm gonna shuffle this equipment around, putting the grain cart in the barn first, then I'm gonna pull the 670 in the barn, and we'll probably leave the 780 out. Now that would be a rough start to the season in the grain cart, taking out the new unloading auger. We're really at the point in the day where I have no idea what's going on. Now I'm in the 620. I've yet to move the combines, but here we are. This thing feels like a Rolls Royce compared to that 946DR. I wonder if I could talk the boss into throwing a PTO on this and then getting a 2,500 bushel grain cart. Unlikely, not impossible. Based on the shuffling I'm doing right now, we may actually be getting geared up to set up to a bend. I was completely kidding. I guess as they say though, broken clocks right at least twice a day. First of many times being hooked up to the inline ripper. I think we're just relocating this time. Looks tiny compared to the tractor. Yeah, the draper's getting moved too. This is no joke. Getting close to game time. Dad's getting antsy. It is going in the barn. And Chris has found somewhere to lean. I think that the boss may be considering picking a few ends off of some cornfields tomorrow, which is why we're doing this hectic little equipment shuffle. Battery just has pre-harvest anxiety, or a little bit of both. We went from having a lot of space in the barn to virtually no space in the barn, especially by the time you account for having the corn head on this. Hopefully we can shut it. We're getting close to rat packed. We're about 2 foot away from actually qualifying for that term. And now I'm worried about my head. Jeff thinks he's cutting beans tomorrow. It's really the time of year where it's just a guessing game. Yeah. Now he's just parking out of the way. Shocker. If I had to summarize the beginning of harvest season, I would call it predictably unpredictable. Things tend to get rather hectic and chaotic as you're watching your crops dry down, seeing your neighbors harvest some of their crops. Gives you a lot of ideas, but patience is key here. Let's take a look at some of our soybeans and see exactly how patient we need to be. We are out in a field of Pioneer 3-1 beans, planted the 5th of April. Very early, survived multiple frosts, a lot of rain, hail, wind, everything you can have on a bean field. And we're here, they look great. They've matured quite a bit in the last week alone. I would guesstimate that 80 to 85% of the field has reached senescence or the end of its life. Now we're just waiting on the dry down period. This is the period where you wait for all of these pods to ripen, get this nice and brown color. We're really looking for some crisp pods before we start harvesting. You can see that one I pulled off the top, which is usually a drier one. Popped right open, which means the combine's not gonna have any problem processing that. And those are some pretty sizable beans too. Woo! We're really looking at that 15% moisture mark before we start harvest. Could be a little more, could be a little less. What's really going to halt our plans are any wet pods or butter beans we have out in the field. These are beans that haven't fully dried down. They're going to, but it's just a matter of time. You can see that one right there is going to be a little challenging to pop open. And when you do, the beans are much mushier inside. There are some very mature looking plants out in the field here that still have these yellow pods. And then you have entire areas of the field that have a lot of yellow foliage and pods as well. Areas like this right here that are obviously still high in moisture are probably going to stop us from being able to come out here and harvest the whole field. Sure, we could probably zigzag our way around and cut a part over there and cut something over here and cut something over there, but that really kind of derails your efficiency. Overall though, I think these 3-1 beans are very close. They look extremely good. A lot of pods, a lot of sizable pods. Looks can be very deceiving with soybeans. As I walk out of the field, I'm also noticing a handful of areas with green stem beans. Sometimes you'll see beans like this. Either they were late emergers or the fungicide has kept them alive longer. Typically the pods will dry down eventually. These are a little bit behind the rest of the field, but these do give your combine quite the challenge in terms of separation. Beans like this are where you're really going to see that high horsepower 780 shine versus our 670. It will be able to push these beans through the rotor much faster. I need to stop daydreaming looking at these beans. I've got a very high yield number in my head. I hate to have those kind of expectations though, because soybeans can a lot of times end up down there, even when they look this good. We're on to our last stop for the day, some Pioneer 3-9 soybeans, planted the 7th and the 8th of April. Not too far behind in terms of planting date, but quite a bit far away in terms of maturity group in soybeans. Those 3-1s are at the beginnings, the 3-9s are at the end of the group. 3-1s are usually 10 to 14 days ahead of a 3-9 in terms of maturing. And you can see that out in the field here. These 3-9s have quite a bit of green left in them, a lot of yellow, not much brown dry material. We're getting somewhat close to harvest, not near as close here though as the field we just came from. I mentioned it a couple videos ago, but something a little bit different was happening out here than our other fields. I noticed a very unusual leaf symptom on them that I hadn't seen before. I would say 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was pulling up to the main farm. We have that same variety of soybean all the way up there, quite a few acres of it here. I pulled up to the farm and I noticed this weird bronzing color on the leaf. A bit of a miscalculation by me. I probably should have made this commentary about a week or two earlier. A lot of the leaves have kind of died off or fallen off the plants. I gathered one right here that still shows that similar symptom. Right here in the leaf, you can make out a little bit of a bronze color. This isn't something that I'd seen before. I got a hold of our Pioneer agronomist, Paul Yoder. He's extremely good at what he does. And what preceded was a very long wild goose chase trying to figure out what this disease was that we've never seen before. Some of you may think that this is a rust. It is not in fact rust. This camera, the lighting, and the fact that the beans are farther along have kind of shifted what it looks like, but it was a bronzing look. We had narrowed it down to 2 different things. Either 1, it was sun scald, which is essentially just sunburn out on these beans, or 2, it was a disease that I've personally never seen in a field before, and that was Cercospora leaf blight. Upon inspection of the stems and petioles themselves, we saw a completely other issue. That issue was stem canker. This petiole fell off right when I picked up this plant, but this necrotic tissue here, right where it attaches to the main stem, is stem canker. This is a disease that infects soybean plants. It infiltrates the petioles, reproduces, and eventually spreads to the entire stem, killing the whole plant. Obviously at this point, there's a variety of different things going on with the plant. It is fairly evident that we have lost yield from something. There is a problem or multiple problems ailing these plants significantly. All of these pods right here are missing beans. Some of the pods have shriveled up completely and died. Regardless, a lot of yield left on the table. So of course, as a curious and concerned farmer, we had our agronomist send off some plant samples to the lab. They analyzed the samples, and the only thing that came back was SDS, or sudden death syndrome, which made no sense at all. There is definitely SDS out here, a plant there, but nothing this significant and not spread across the entire field. That lab result really raised more questions than it answered. There wasn't any evidence of stem canker, which is on pretty much every plant out in this field. No Cercospora leaf blight, which was my guess. No pod and stem blight, no frog eye leaf spot, no rust. Nothing under the sun except for SDS. I really find that hard to believe, and I don't actually know exactly what is happening out in this field. My guess is that we have multiple pathogens out here in our fields attacking our soybeans and really stealing a lot of yield from us. I mentioned when we kept getting those rains and our soybeans were laying over that I wasn't sure what the long-term consequences of that was. In retrospect, I believe that when our soybeans laid over, created a mat, and kept getting moisture and added humidity, that we really created the perfect breeding ground for disease, which is horrible for us as farmers because disease robs yield. At the end of the day, I'm still just as confused about what's going on out in our field here as I was when I first started. I have a lot of good guesses, but none of them really make sense or pan out completely. What this really goes to show you is that we only understand a moderate portion of everything that goes into raising crops. We have a very good understanding of the obvious things: soil fertility and pH, drainage and moisture, and genetics. Add in a little understanding of fungicide and insecticides, but overall, there is still so much untapped potential out in these fields that we've yet to really figure out how to capture. Could invasive diseases and insects shave 30 or 40 bushels off this field? It's highly possible. Could it have been an underground pest like a nematode? Also possible. Could it have been the lack of sunlight we had in July? You could add that to the list as well. Farmers like myself and the agriculture industry as a whole has so much more to learn in terms of what we're doing out here. We're really just touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of technology and advancements of all different disciplines. Regardless though, I think that's enough farming for one video. We've gotten a lot done today, and I did a whole lot of talking, probably too much for some of you. I appreciate you all tuning in. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!